Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hi friends, welcome to week 6 of 2024, which is just crazy. I'm still not used to saying it yet. We have 11 books to talk about, so we're gonna dive right into some of the announcements and thank yous and stuff, and then we'll get into those 11 books because there are some gems in there for sure. So first up, we do have a new patron to welcome. We have Anna Joe. Anna, thank you so much for choosing to support the Book Refuge that way. It means so much. In my vlog that will be going up for Patreon this week, I had my meeting with my accountant, and boy, am I happy to have you guys as a support, because wow, it's tough out there. That's always a bit of a traumatic thing. Also, there was a new Etsy drop. I'm hoping you guys love this one. Besides still having some of the lovely Valentine designs, I had this coffee and bees drop, which I thought was super cute. Actually, there was these coffee patterns which are available. There's one that's just these coffee beans. There is the coffee beans with like mochas and some sayings on it. And then there's these really cute kind of like, I mean, it's not retro, but it reminds me of like Central Perk, you know, like on maybe like the early 2000s designs of some different coffee things. And actually through next Saturday, everything regular price is 20% off. There's no coupon needed, so you can check that out. There are still the discounted sleeves, which are in the mystery pack. And just so you know, I say in the listing, you can request a certain pattern, and if I have any left of that one, I'll happily send it your way. So please check that out. My Etsy shop is another way to support the store, and you get something from it. Oh yeah, here's the cute little bee designs as well. I don't know what it is with bees, but they keep showing up in my shop and you guys tend to like these. So there's those. And then there's this really pretty like darker flower pattern. It feels very fall, but I liked it. But yeah, and don't miss out on the Valentine patterns either. So definitely check out the Etsy shop if you're looking for a way to support the channel and get some cute stuff. There's still some bookish pouches. I do still have some of the XL sleeves as well. I have a couple of these Beauty and the Beast left. These ones fit the hardbacks. So, alrighty, that is that. This week, there was a little bit of tea going on in the romance community. My video that I put up on Saturday this week, I did a taboo recommendations video because people decided they were going to be bitches about taboo romance again. I mean, this comes around and around, so it's not like I'm shocked by it, like just being real. It happens, it pops up. People think they need to put their nose into things they don't. You know, if you don't want to read something, don't read it. Absolutely. But shaming people or trying to get authors, like, not even just like canceled, like they're trying to get them removed from platforms that help provide for them, just really pissed me off. So I made a whole video with all my favorite taboo romances through the years, and I have a whole playlist of all my favorite taboo romances. So definitely check that out if taboo romance is your jam. My playlist has over 30 videos of different things on there. So yeah, this is definitely a safe space, which I know that term gets overused, but for the romance community, I want this to be a safe place no matter what you love to read. There is something for everyone here. So let's get into these books. I had a lot of arcs this week that I got through. Some were better than others for me. So let's dive in. The first book that I finished is now out. This is Impromptu Match by Lily Mayne. So I'm on Lily Mayne's arc team. I do usually say yes to every arc that comes along. She has some new series that she started recently. I really wish she would continue with my Monstrous series and either finish that up or, you know, whatever. But this is still a monster romance. This is an MM romance. And I gotta be honest, as someone who loves Lily Mayne, and I've read every book of hers except for one because I'm saving it, I don't know what the hell this book was. Okay, I'm saying that as nicely as possible. This and I don't say this with any shade to it, but this was basically a monster erotica, but it was so long. Like, this type of book, for what happened in it, could have been 200 pages. And lately, Lily Mayne doesn't exactly hold herself back for what she's doing. She doesn't artfully put things together. Like, this was so many chapters of the same thing, and that thing was monster fucking. Now, I love a good monster fuck. I really do. But I also enjoy the emotion and the relationship building that Lily Mayne has done, particularly in like the Fae trilogy as well as the Monstrous series. And this one, I don't understand. I don't understand it. So this one is about Taylor, who is a human man. He works in an office building. He lives a very mediocre, sad life, is how he feels. He recently has, well, no, it's not even recent. It's been a few years since he broke up with his long-term partner, who left him for someone more interesting and spicy than he was. And one day he's late at work. He actually falls asleep after an office party, and he goes downstairs and discovers a whole new world. In some of the, I believe, lower levels of his, I don't even know, but on some different floors of his office building, there's a whole secret world of monster wrestling, okay? And he ends up stumbling into this, and he is mistaken for a stripper, who there is one of our monsters, our main monster, Holt. He is a, I can't remember what it's called. It has a name, but to me it sounds kind of like an empath. Like, he can feed off of people's like emotions. And so these strippers that he will hire, they like act in a certain vibe that he wants. And supposedly the vibe he wanted that day was unhappy, sad, office worker. That is the feelings he wanted to eat that day. And so Taylor seems to be that stripper who showed up because he's sad office worker. So very weird. And so Taylor sees all these people looking like monsters, and he assumes it's a cosplay party. And when Holt finally clicks that Taylor really is a human who stumbled into here, he kind of plays along with him. That, oh yeah, we're all in cosplay, and there's this monster wrestling that's about to start. And Holt then tells him, he's like, we need to wait for our memory wiper to come, who happens to be on vacation. So there's no way to erase Taylor's memory of what he's seen. So Holt then plays it off like it is just that it's a cosplay thing, and these people are really into cosplaying as monsters and then wrestling for people. So there's that. Because Holt actually does have like a human guise he can put on. And so eventually Holt wants him to come back again because he's very intrigued by Taylor. So he invites him to come watch again, and they can put on their human face or that. But pretty soon Taylor starts to figure out that this is really what Holt is, and by now Holt and Taylor have warm fuzzy feelings for each other, and so then they begin a sexual relationship, and then the rest of this book is constant fucking. So this was a 5 on my spice scale, but it was for quantity. There are toys used. There's lots of talk of balls. Like, Holt's balls are mentioned way too much, which Lily Mayne even has as a little, like, we talk about his balls too much. There's so much sex, monster sex, all the things happening. So I don't know what the point was. I was skimming and skimming. This book was over 400 pages, and at least half of it was the fucking, and I don't really like that from Lily Mayne. I've kind of been disappointed with the last couple because I feel like she's just gotten more into like what is the most interesting monster sex that I can write. And it's not that that's bad. Like, it's fun to read weird body parts and getting off. And as always, her characters are very sweet. Both of her men are just so like lovable. So it's not that I would ever call it bad. I don't feel the skill in her storytelling that I had before. So this was an arc, and I did end up giving it 4 stars. And it's, as I said, a 5 on the spice scale. But I just wasn't as satisfied with the book as I wanted to be. And this is like the second one in a row that I felt that with, because I felt that way about the greed or not Berries and Greed. I liked Berries and Greed. But for Shots and Barbs, I didn't really connect with those characters. So we'll see. We'll see how I feel. I might hold off on reading Arcs unless it is one from her, you know, other monster series for now, because I'm just not feeling it. Not feeling it. So moving along, there is Make Believe Match by Melanie Harlow. So I was just welcomed into her hype team recently, which I love Melanie Harlow, and I'm happy because it means I should finally get her arcs again. It has been a couple years since at least a year since I've gotten a Melanie Harlow arc because she's gotten so popular, and I had the opportunity to apply for the Melanie's Harlots and I happily got on that. So now I should have first access to some arcs, which is exciting for me. So I needed to catch up with one of her books. I was just one behind. Make Believe Match came out in November last year. And I just was having trouble getting into it. So the audiobook came out a little while later, and I was like, this is perfect because I love listening to hers on audio. So I grabbed the audio for this one, and when I went home to visit recently, I listened to this on the drive there and back. So Make Believe Match is book 3 in the Cherry Tree Harbor, and this one is a marriage of convenience. Our heroine, her name is Lexi, and to keep her family's ski resort, she needs to get married. And the man, Devlin, who was originally sent from his work to acquire the place, ends up getting fired because he won't be cruel enough to take the business, to take it away. And so when he gets fired, he ends up reaching out to Lexi, and when he finds out the way that she'll be able to keep it is if she gets married, he's like, well, let's pretend we fell in love and get married, and we'll stay married for 6 months or something. Well, then Lexi, kind of finds out she's not going to be able to get a quickie divorce if she wants to keep everything, so it might be complicated. But Devlin is actually the one who is related to the other brothers that we've read so far, so that was cool. The next one is coming next month early, and that's Small Town Swoon, and that one's going to be the actor brother, and I'm excited to read that one. So Cherry Tree Harbor, this one was fun. I didn't feel as much connected with Devlin and Lexi as I did particularly Hideaway Heart, but I do attribute some of that to the fact that I split this book up. I read the first half, and then I just wasn't in the mood for it until I got the audio. So I think some of that is probably down to me. I will happily take the blame for that. So I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 3 on the spice scale. Then I had a reread here because I listened to the ALC of Twisted Promises by Lillian Harris. I read this in December last year to prepare for book 4. So this one, the narrators for this are now Jason Clark and Ramona Master, and this audiobook is out now. This is book 3 in her Messina crime family, and this one is about Gio and Isolt, and they have some interactions when they don't know who each other is. And then later on in the story, which if you're reading this story in order, you already know this, that Gio is now supposed to marry her younger sister for an alliance. And Isolt is not, even though she's the oldest sister, she's not the one in line to have to marry because she's actually one of her father's fighters. And she actually has been through a pretty traumatic event. So her father is like, you've already done your duty by your family. And she continues to do that by helping train their fighters in kind of this mafia training program that they have. So she's not supposed to be the one to have to get married, but she had these interactions with Gio, and they have crazy chemistry. And she's someone he wants to get his hands on. He has his eyes on her, even though he doesn't know who she is. And when he's told he has to marry someone for the family, he's like, fuck no. But then he meets his arranged bride and realizes it's the younger sister of the woman he does want. So he's going to figure out how to make it happen. So this was a really good one. This is my favorite in the series. I gave it 4.5 stars, and it is I think 4 on the spice scale. They have some pretty spicy interactions. There's some impact play. There's some bondage. There's some pretty spicy scenarios between these two. And Isolt is very feisty. I like her a lot. Okay, next up, I read Wild for You by Kristen Proby. This was a recent release, and I actually read this because of Lila Junco. As you guys probably know if you follow my Instagram, I'm obsessed with the trope cards from Lila Junco. I love them, okay? I buy every single set. I have a whole photo album filled with them. I use them to make my shorts and to take photos for Instagram. I love them. And one of the sets that just released was for Kristen Proby's Wilds of Montana series. It's a new series that started. Now, if you've ever read Kristen Proby, which I have read some of hers in the past, she has this like Seattle series, and she actually has so many books that all connect together. And as I said, I've read a few over the years. And the Wild for You is about the daughter of one of the like main couples, one of the football players and a nurse. And I actually haven't read their story, so I wanna read theirs. But this one was releasing, and Erin is the daughter, and she actually goes to Montana with her like cousins for a ski trip, and she decides she wants to live there. So that happened in a previous book. I guess it's already happened by the start of this. And even though she has a big inheritance, she has lots of money given to her by her parents, she doesn't want to use that. She wants to make a go of things on her own and know that she can do it on her own. She's just very independent. And so she gets a job at this coffee shop, and she's living in this little town. And then her car has problems, and so she needs a second job, even though she doesn't really need a second job. And one of her friends at this coffee shop, her older brother, Remington, needs a nanny. He has 2 little kids. He's a cattle rancher. You can see where I'm going with this. And she ends up getting hired for a second job to be his nanny. And right away, he has some crazy chemistry for her. This does have a bit of that, like the hero is lusting very quickly for her, but I don't know, I found him that charming, grumpy type. Not to make a comparison, but there was a lot of Kate and Willa vibes in this pairing. Like, let's just say it, like, it's there. It's not such a comparison as to be like distracting, but enough that if you like Heartless, I think you could like Wild for You, and it's the start of a new series. You could definitely read this one. I listened to the audiobook, which was narrated by, I have it written down, by Sebastian York and Emma Wilder. That's also part of the reason I was like, oh, that's 2 of my favorite narrators. And with the Kindle, it has the $7.50 upgrade for the audiobook, so I just bought it. I don't regret it. I probably will buy a physical copy of this book. But yeah, I had already bought the card set because it has like Cattle Rancher and Single Dad and stuff in it. And then I was like, I should read this book. It has all these tropes that I love, and I have liked Kristen Proby before. So I went ahead and snagged it, and I really enjoyed this. So besides the setup I already said, I really liked, of course, the family we're getting introduced to, and of course they're going to have more books. I really loved the land they described. They spend a lot of time out on the land. I think there's some good opportunity for like where they're going to go with more of the story. I hope they do. And I mean, there is that tiny little suspense element in this one that I don't necessarily feel like it needed to have. This is something I'm getting a little bit tired of. And I was actually talking with Jessin because I got her to read a different book of mine that I love that has these kind of tropes in it. And she was really annoyed that there had to be a suspense element in it. And I didn't even really think about it because I'm just used to it happening. But again, the comparison that I make, Heartless did not have a suspense plot. Really, none of Elsie's books in that series had to have a suspense plot, okay? They have conflict. Maybe they have an evil ex that's frustrating, but there didn't need to be this random suspense plot that just feels like it comes out of nowhere, Now, I know for this, based on the history, they say that our heroine has been stalked before. She was stalked when she was in college because of her connection with her father, the famous football player. So I wouldn't say it's completely off track for this author and for her books. I would like us to do away with it unless it's actually a small town suspense. If you're just telling a small town romance, like there was enough going in this story without adding this suspense element into it. And so I'm not just blaming this story because this is a trend that's happening. But like, I think of an example of like Devney Perry, her books are set up to have the suspense element. Like, they usually start with a mystery. They usually start with something like that. So it's understandable. Then when you have like a book where there's no suspense element until the third act, or it's put in place in the second act to be there for the third act, it just feels a little like, I don't know, it feels a little bit unnecessary to the story. And again, I do point back to the Chestnut Spring series because there was enough work done with the characters to have drama and like entertainment without, oh, there's a random shooter in this one. That's not what was in this one. But that did happen in another one that I recently just read that I was like, why did we have to put that in there? As for terms of like the relationship and the spice and all of that was great in this book. I loved it. So this one I actually did give 4.5 stars to. I only took a half star off because that last little bit of this one, I was like, where is this coming from? And it kind of annoyed me. But I still will highly recommend this. It might not bug you the way it bugged me. You might just be fine with that. But just in general, as I've said, I'm getting a little bit tired of the suspense element for no reason. Like, these books don't have to have it. And again, unless it's a small town suspense story, like, it doesn't need. Also, I think of like, for real, like, think of the, what's the series called? The, I don't know, the Corinne Michael series right now. That one doesn't have a suspense element. They've found other ways, you know, like, you don't need it. You can do a small town drama without it, you know. Speaking of the Corinne Michaels, I have the arc for the next book. I'm very excited for that. So anyway, I don't want to rag on, that wasn't me like ragging on this book. Again, I give this 4.5 stars. If you love Heartless, if you love, that small town single dad, nanny, cute kids, it's going to be a winner. Okay, it's absolutely going to be a winner. And with Sebastian York and Emma Wilder narrating it, I highly recommend that you listen. And the next book, Chasing Wild, is about one of his brothers who's the police officer. Count me in. I'm still into all of the small town tropes where we hit all of those things. Like, I'm totally here for it. So also, I brought up that suspense element because we're going to get to another book that has to do with that. So, okay, next up, we had an arc for Redemption by Noelle Adams, The Redemption. This will be coming out this week. I think it comes out the week that I'm talking about this. This is book 3 in the Worthington series. So, The Worthingtons by Noelle Adams, aka Claire Kent, is this kind of like billionaire family, who all have a different damage going on. The first one, though, had an amnesia romance. The second one had a twin swap. This one is a bodyguard romance. And the next one coming is the deserted island one. Plane crash. I can't wait for that one. Shipwreck, whatever. But this one is about Louisa Worthington. And she is actually kind of like the socialite who went off the deep end, is kind of the thing. So she is one of those girls that was like a rich girl, famous because daddy's rich, that type of thing. And when she was a younger woman, she was very toxic. She was into the drug scene. She got herself into dangerous domestic situations. So her father has a bodyguard team, and one of the bodyguards who was always assigned to her when she was young was Caleb. Now, we will find out later on that Caleb's kind of always had a thing for her, but, you know, when she was younger, it was more inappropriate. I mean, it's still inappropriate. Bodyguard romances are still kind of forbidden, you know, later on, but it was more inappropriate when she was younger. But she reached a breaking point about, I think it's supposed to be like 5 years ago. I actually don't remember what the timeline was, but she reached this breaking point and she asked Caleb, get me out of here. So he helped her get into a rehab. And then after rehab, she really did like clean up. She ditched all of those friends that were toxic to her, those friends that were only friends because she was rich. And she really got into her art. And so I believe she paints. So she has this pretty quiet existence that she's been living. And she hasn't really had much protection going on at all because she's secluded herself away. Now with some drama that one of her cousins is having, which are the other Worthington brothers, they need her to be protected. So Caleb gets assigned to her again. So it's been many years, and now he's her main bodyguard. There's some other guys obviously rotating out, but he moves into her home with her, into her guest bedroom, and so he's kind of her 24/7 protection to help her. And what I really like is she's the type of heroine that she knows the danger to her family. So though there's a bit of an adjustment period of her getting used to it again, like she's had protection before, she knows why it's important. So it's not so much about her trying to like, you know, escape her protection or like do that stuff, which I love that. I love when we're not trying to do that. It's more of the forced proximity of being close by to this man who has seen the ugliest parts of her, who, you know, is the one who saw her at her worst and, like I said, helped get her into rehab. So I like that. And now I don't normally like the story of, like, you know, the rich girl who's into drugs and doing that. Not that many people do, but this was a shorter book, you know. Claire Kent and Noelle Adams don't tend to stick around the story longer than necessary, which is something I really admire about her storytelling. She always leaves me wanting more, but yet still tells a complete story. And I think that is so rare. I think it's so rare, you guys. You don't understand what I'm just, yeah. So I thought this was very well done. I gave this one 4 stars, and it was a 2.5 on the spice scale. I really loved Caleb. He managed to be very swoony in the short amount of time we had him. Although he is very much trying to resist her quite strongly. But, you know, he only can do so well at that. Okay, then there was a fan fiction that I read, and I think a lot of you will like. This one is The Flat Next Door, and it's by Smith and Barrowman. So a couple reasons why I think you'll like this. Number one, this is a Lucius and Hermione, so it's an age gap. But it's a very different Lucius than like Lucius Malfoy, because this is a Muggle AU. So if you don't know that terminology, it means it's an alternative universe. There's no magic. So this is just, you know, the personas of these characters in a non-magical world. So in this world, Lucius is a writer. His family's already really wealthy, but he's a writer. He recently is divorced from Narcissa, who he caught cheating on him. Draco is married to Katie in this one, Katie Bell in this one. They have a little boy, Scorpius. And Lucius lives in this house that's like, you know, a connected house. So he has a flat share, right? He has a neighbor. And this neighbor, he starts to overhear having wild sex every Tuesday night, because the way their home is set up, their bedrooms are next to each other, which, as someone who lives in an apartment, that is like the dumbest thing ever. Like, really, that's not how you should set things up in an apartment. And he hears it, and he doesn't know that it's a woman who lives there because he hasn't seen her there. She moved into this place, but then like wasn't there. And we find out why that is in just a minute, but he doesn't even know that it's a woman who lives there until he runs into her in the hallway, and he's kind of dumbstruck because she's gorgeous. So now that this woman is living there, she comes over and brings him a gift basket. So he's been listening to this sex happen for a few weeks. Again, it happens like every Tuesday night. And he started sleeping on his couch on Tuesday night, so he doesn't have to hear it, because it is arousing him, especially once he knows it's this beautiful woman who's doing it. And he's like, that's inappropriate. I don't want to be having these thoughts. Although Draco teases him, because he tells Draco like why he hasn't been sleeping well. And Draco's like, Dad, it's like free porn. Enjoy it. So that was funny. But anyway, Hermione comes over and brings a gift basket and introduces herself, and she says, I'm a ballerina with the Royal Ballet, and I was just doing some training in Paris for the last couple months, so that's why she was living there but wasn't living there. And she actually infers the fact that her bedroom is up against his bedroom, because she comes in and she realizes that their places are mirrors of each other facing inward, right? So their bedrooms match up, and she clicks into place, and she's like, I am mortified. And he's like, it's all right, you couldn't have known. And she's like, oh my gosh, she's so embarrassed. She's like, I will make sure we're not doing that anymore. And he's like, yeah, okay. So they actually end up becoming friends, and Not only does her Tuesday night activity start to end pretty soon, but on Thursday nights, she will bring takeout, or he'll bring takeout, and they'll go to his house and visit. So they become friends. And so this is actually like a slow burn between the two of them, because soon she lets it slip that she's not seeing her hookup anymore, who wasn't even a boyfriend. They were friends who, since they weren't seeing anybody, they would meet up to have just no strings attached sex every week. And this was actually Charlie Weasley that she's having this with. And she ends it with him. And she lets that slip to Lucius. And eventually, like, he's encouraged by, like, Draco and his daughter-in-law to go for it. Because he's like, age is just a number and you obviously like her. And so a relationship with Hermione begins. And it's so sweet. Like, his son and daughter-in-law are just so encouraging. And her friends are really encouraging. The way they do it in this one is that he ends up meeting her friends, and Harry is the son of his enemy from school. And, you know, so he knew James. And he shares with Hermione that James was actually a bully to Severus. So him and Severus were friends at boarding school in this one. And I believe that, like, Severus ended up, like, killing himself from, like, a bullying or something like that. It was dark anyway. And so Lucius has, like, this instant dislike for Harry because he looks like James. And in this world, like, we find out more about that, and Harry ends up being, like, really cool in this one. So anyway, I won't spoil anymore. I will leave the link to this one down below so you can download this. I think you'll really enjoy this one. I did give this one 4 stars though, and it's a 3 on my spice scale. So the reason for the 4 is that this did a bit fall into the trap that some fan fictions do, where I feel like it went on just a little bit too long. And it also has evil, like, Narcissa, like, evil ex-wife in this one. That was a little bit cartoonish for me. But it's not a super long book, so even though it drug on a little bit right there, it's not like it was, you know, it wasn't Measure of a Man length, so it'll be okay. So yeah, really enjoyed this one. So if you like age gap and you like a slow burn and just, like, really, like, they're like soulmates and it's really beautiful, I highly recommend this one. Okay, then I finally read Dom by S.J. Tilley. And this was great. So this book has been out for a little bit. This one came out a while ago. Hans is actually out already. But I've been listening to the audios with these. I shared that. So I pre-ordered this audiobook and it just came out. The audiobook for Hans doesn't come out until May. So I'll probably wait to read it till then, because I just enjoy Jack Callahan. And so in this audiobook, it's Jack Callahan and Chloe Ryan. And they do all of the audiobooks. And I just really love this. So this one, Dom is actually from the Chicago Mafia. So the previous 2 were Minneapolis, which I really liked, as I said. But Dom is the head of the Chicago Mafia. And we have Val, who is King's half-sister. She is the daughter of King's father's mistress. So they have kind of a loose relationship. And she's actually like 20 years younger than him. So he's quite a bit older than her. And Val is really on her own in life. So the beginning of this book is actually her getting a flight back to Minneapolis, I think. I think she's on the way home or something. I can't remember which direction they're going. And she runs into him in the airport. And he accidentally bumps into her and rips her bag. And so he buys her a new bag. And then they're sitting by each other on the airplane. And they have this flight together. And when they get off the plane, their chemistry had just been so crazy that they end up sneaking into a room at the airport and having sex before they say goodbye. And he gives her his phone number before he leaves. And then they begin kind of this, like, texting relationship. And very quickly in the story, they both end up in Vegas. She's there for a bachelorette weekend and he ends up there, and they end up married in Vegas. Now, she has very vague memories of this the next day, and it's because he kind of drugged her and forced her into this marriage. And we find out when she brings him home to meet her brother that her brother knows Dom, and that Dom actually married Val to leverage it over King to try to force him to let him into the alliance. So Val just feels absolutely betrayed because she thought this was love at first sight. and she's a very lonely woman. She's been really abandoned by her mother. She hasn't ever been fully accepted by King and Aspen because of who her mother was, you know, her being the daughter of the mistress. And so she thought she really found a family, found a home. And to discover that she was tricked is just really devastating. But Dom, he is definitely more into her than he lets on to start with, because he really wants to, like, you know, he did trick her. He did kind of use her to get to this. So he's definitely being much more like standoffish than he actually feels. So watching him really like fall for her and want to give her everything was just, of course, very beautiful to see. So this is my favorite in the series so far. I really also liked the setup for Hans. Like, I did want to read it right away, but I can be patient. I'll wait for the audiobook. And yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. And this one is a 3 on the spice scale. This does have some breeding kink, and it does have some trigger warnings for birth control, tampering, gun violence, an abusive parent, mentions of suicide, and some other things like that. Okay, next up, I'm just going to quickly mention that I did read the Sleeping Beauty short by Sam Mariano that's at the end of Surrender, and there is so much debate going on about this. If you check out the Goodreads reviews, people just absolutely slammed this. I am fully invested in whatever Sam's going to do. I know the next 3 books are going to turn everything upside down. It's going to piss a lot of people off, and I normally like a conventional HEA as well. That is my favorite. But Sam Mariano does stuff that no one else does. And I think we forget that. You know, I was reading one of her posts about it, and she really has gone places other people haven't gone first in a lot of aspects. Like, if you look at what the landscape of bully romance looks at now, she was one of the people who was the foundation of that, you know? And so many things that happen in, like, I'm thinking of just the S. Massery series I'm reading. Some of, you know, the situations I've read in other like, that comes from Untouchable. It comes from heroes that she wrote, or main characters that she wrote. And, you know, people are always uncomfortable and scared of things the first time they read them. So I'm not defending and or saying anything else about the Sleeping Beauty short, but there are a few things she reminded us. So the Sleeping Beauty short actually takes place near the beginning of Surrender, because it happens right after the Halloween party, which the Halloween party is the beginning of Surrender. And we see Dare and Aubrey 2 more times in that book that happen after the Sleeping Beauty scene. It's just that she put that Sleeping Beauty scene at the end of Surrender because it's in Aubrey's point of view. So, but you got to remember that when you read it, that this isn't happening afterwards. This is happening earlier. And we see Dare and Aubrey after that scene, and, like, they're okay. Things are changing and growing in their relationship, and their story isn't done yet, which I know not everyone will want to read. But if you want to be done with it, you can be done after Surrender. You don't have to read Sleeping Beauty, and you can just read Surrender, and everybody got an HEA, and you can be happy with it. I know most people won't feel that way. You know, they're going to want to keep going. I want to keep going because I got to say the Morelli series is still one of the series that lives rent-free in my head. I've never read anything like it. And if people don't like it, that's okay. There are millions of other books that won't be unconventional like that. They're going to tell you the story the way you want to hear it, and you can read those. You don't have to be a fan of Sam Mariano. So I don't think that, you know, some of the people get so angry. You know, she said in one of her posts, which I know some people feel is condescending, but if you look at the hate that this woman gets, the fact that she interacts with her fans at all, we're very lucky that she does, because people literally tell her, like, death threats or call her a cunt or say she doesn't know anything for telling the story she wants to tell. Nobody's forcing you to read it. It goes back to that whole conversation about Taboo at the beginning, which I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get heated about this. I said I wasn't going to go into it. But, like, I've just been watching how much she has, like, had to defend herself for her own books. Like, you don't own her stories. If you don't want to read about Dare and Aubrey and see how things might get changed up, don't. You know, we don't have to read it. So, but I was not comfortable reading Sleeping Beauty. I had the squirms, but she has said multiple times, you're supposed to be uncomfortable because it was a punishment. Dare is punishing her. And it's awkward. I have no idea where she's going to go. The speculation is rampant. It is crazy, but I'm not going to be mad about it, because if I really was that stressed, I would stop reading. But I just want more. I want to see what she's going to do. And yeah, I might not love it, but I haven't stopped thinking about this world since I read Contempt. Like, I need to know what's going to happen. So for me, I'm on the ride. The Goodreads reviews, and that might feel differently, but I'm in it. And I enjoy the speculation and wanting to see it. So there we go. All right, then I read Healing the Orc's Heart by Leon Riley. I don't know how to say it. Maybe it's Lonnie Riley. I'm not sure. This was one I actually bought when it released. I think it was only like 99 cents on release day. And this was just a fun little monster romance. It's between a human and an orc. There's war that's happening between, I think, like orcs and trolls and humans and stuff, whatever. I don't know. And our human, her name is Nira, and she's a healer. And so she comes across Blizek, who has been injured, and she brings him to her home. They don't speak the same language to start, but they have this really crazy chemistry. And it turns out it's because they're mates, but like they don't know that right away. And so she heals him. They start to learn each other's languages, and then they end up having a sexual experience together. And it scares the ever-loving shit out of Blizek, because he realizes that they're mates, and he's like, I can't be a mate with a human. Oh my God. And so he leaves. And then the story tells us what happens after he does that. So this was fun. It was spicy. I do feel like it should have been a longer story for how much we were going through with it, but I thought it was interesting, and it did really like keep me engaged. I read it all in one sitting. So I did give it 3.5 stars. It's a 2.5 on the spice scale, because I kind of wanted the hero to grovel a bit more once he came back to her, just because of how he left her was just so gut-wrenching. I wanted a bit more than that. Okay, next up I read Aldo by Melanie Moreland, and this was probably my favorite read of the week, mostly because it surprised me. It's really tied with Dom. Dom was really good, but Aldo just was so good. So this is book 1 in the Men of the Falls. It comes out soon. I can't remember when. I think it's the 20th. There's a lot of books coming out, the 20th, whatever. But Melanie Moreland is releasing these 2 books, Aldo and Roman. They'll be coming out pretty close to each other, and they're kind of like mafia in Niagara Falls. And Roman and Aldo work and run this casino there. They are connected with the mafia, organized crime. And our heroine, Violet, has kind of lost everything. Her boyfriend literally cleaned out her apartment and like left her destitute. And so she moves to Niagara Falls, and she gets a job at this casino. And Aldo is the one who hires her. So he hires her to work there. And they are immediately attracted to each other. Violet just has this air of like kindness around her. She's also very sassy, though. She's not a pushover. So even though she's had everything like stripped from her, she's still kind of like very like upbeat about it. And Aldo can't help but be drawn to her. He's never felt this like connection with a woman before, but she needs this job. She needs to work there. And so he doesn't want to, you know, sleep with her and make her uncomfortable or mess it up. So he really tries to keep himself away from her. But this chemistry just keeps coming, and he'll like come to the deli where she's working to like eat lunch there, and they'll just be drawn together. And so finally she gets tired of waiting, and she slips him a saucy little note and is kind of egging him on. So they begin kind of this flirtation back and forth that's just raising the heat between them, which is just so great. And so, yeah, and then it goes somewhere from there. So this I gave 5 stars. It's a 2 on the spice scale. It's not over the top. It is only a little over 200 pages. And I said this on my Instagram, and I'll say it here. This really reminded me of like one of Neva Altaj, one of her mafia, where it's not too dark. There's still some dark things that happen. Our heroine does get attacked, of course not by the hero, but attacked by someone else in a pretty like brutal fashion. Not a sexual assault, but there's a pretty brutal assault that happens in here. But like the relationship between them and like the softness in their relationship within this world, like there's no other one that I like compare this to, but some of Neva Altaj's books in the Perfectly Imperfect series. Like, that is what I felt when I was done with it. I feel the same as I feel about some of those books. So that being said, I highly recommend this one. I didn't know Melanie Moreland did like organized crime books. I thought she mostly wrote like small town romance. That's what I know her from. But I mean, I guess she did write My Favorite Kidnapper, which was kind of organized crime, but like that one was like a rom-com version. So yeah, I really recommend this, and I can't wait to read Roman. He was a great character in this one. So yeah, highly recommend. This will be a really quick read. And again, I think if you love the Perfectly Imperfect series, this is going to be a good one for you too. And then the last book that I finished late last night because I kind of wanted to get it done. And that was Claim Me Forever by A.L. Jackson. This one will be book 3 in the Time River series, which it appears there'll be 4 books in it because there's still one more in this series at least. But this one is about Ezra, who has 3 kids. He has twin boys and a little girl. He is a widower. His wife recently died in a pretty brutal fashion, as we'll find out. And then we have Savannah, who is in Time River to discover what happened to her sister. She received this journal in the mail a little while ago that seemed to be about her sister. We don't fully understand why or how it's connected, but she received this journal, and so she's made her way to this town. She, in the beginning, is actually sleeping in her car. And that's when Ezra comes upon her because she's trespassing where she is sleeping in her car. And so he actually takes her into the station and tries to get information out of her. And she's like, no, I'm not sharing. And he ends up like finding her a safe place to live and making sure she gets a job with Dakota, who I believe it is his sister or his cousin. I can't remember if they're sisters or cousins at this point. I don't know how everyone's related, but she gets a job at Dakota's coffee shop. And, yeah, well, and so they keep being drawn to each other. He calls her his little trespasser, which got a little bit annoying. And of course there's a suspense element. So this is the one. This series is sold as romantic suspense. All the books in this series, all the books by A.L. Jackson really have the suspense element. So this isn't one that I'm complaining about in the way that I was, some of the other ones, but the thing that is hitting me, okay, so I've liked the audiobooks for this series, okay? I like A.L. Jackson. But for me, books 1 and 2 in this series didn't do too much of the poetry aspect that she puts in. And this one, it felt like I got punched in the face with it again. Like, she just has this writing style that feels very bloated. Like, she'll say a statement and then put this, like, flowery qualifier around it. So it'll be like, my heart stopped like it was falling into an abyss. I looked into her eyes and it was like looking into the sun. After each one, she has these like overly descriptive lines and it just bloats the story. And then if she's going to like describe something, she does it in like 5 different ways. So it just is mixed with the romantic suspense element. And it just feels so drama filled. And it, again, just bloats the story. And, like, they'll go to kiss each other. And it's like, and she's like, and my soul was complete the moments our lips touch. Every experience is like that. It's not just, like, the penultimate one. It's every interaction is like these people are starving artists who have to make the most of everything. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just because I had just read a simpler couple of stories that really got to the point, that this 512-page book, this audiobook is very long. I had the ALC of this, was just so bloated that it drug this one down a bit for me. And it bums me out because that's how I first felt about the very first A.L. Jackson I ever read, when I read Give Me a Reason. And I stayed away from her books for a while because of that. Then I tried the audiobook for other books in the series, and that really helped. And I've enjoyed, like I said, I've loved the first 2 books in Time River, but this one just threw me right back into that, where it would just felt like, can you get to the point? Because every explanation had to be in the most dramatic fashion, and it just makes you start rolling your eyes, and I don't want to do that. I like these characters. I loved his kids. I love the found family, well, an actual family for some of these guys, but like the found family aspect for her, but it's just so dramatic. And then, like, again, she does put like anal in every one of her books, which I love, but because of the like overly dramatic fashion, like they're about to have anal And the way that he's like, "You're gonna give me everything, baby girl," and she's like, "Take me, take it all." And it just made it feel so cheesy in a moment that I wanted to be romantic. So I know I just ragged on this a bunch. I still love this series, but I'm getting kind of like, it was so much. Like, it was just so much. And I feel bad. I feel bad because I love being on her ARC team, and she does send such beautiful gifts to her ARC readers or her influencers, and I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to finish out this series with her, but if I still feel that way after the next one, I'll maybe bow out so that someone who loves it more can have it, you know? I always want to be responsible with the gifts that I get. I don't know another way to say that. Like, I want to be responsible with the gifts I'm given from authors and not just get it to get it, you know? Because the first book in this series, I did buy my own hardback. I bought it at Book Bonanza, got it signed by her. It was great. And then the second one, she did send me as a gift, and I loved that book. And this one, I know I'm getting a gift of this one as well. But this book was just a bit, like, tougher, you know? So, I don't know. I'll stop whining about it. I gave it a 4.5 because it was an ARC, and I didn't, like, it's just the writing style is starting to not be for me. That's what it is. I don't have a problem with the story between these two. I think it was good, and the stuff that happened to her sister and where that's going is very powerful. So this might not annoy other people, and the story is powerful, but, like, I'm not a person who gets caught up in writing style. And again, the first 2 books didn't do this to me. But this one, the writing style just felt like too much this time. So let's go ahead and wrap up this one, though. Those are all the books that I read. Oh, I should tell you, yeah, 4.5. It was a 3 on the spice scale. There was some anal. There was some toys used. She teases him by using a toy in front of him. That was hot. And there is some trigger warnings for mental illness, sex trafficking, assault of children, murder. It's got some of those triggers there, so check those out. And yeah, those are the 11 books I read. Make sure you check out the sale on my Etsy. That will be going this week. There's a lot of fun designs on there, so definitely check that out. And thank you so much to my supporters on Patreon and channel memberships. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. I put out 4 videos a week, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.